okay, there's some fight with these guys. They're not just going to lie down in moments where at times in the past they have lied down?
I take probably, Joe, a couple things from it. I think one, definitely that. But I think the other thing, too, that was just disappointing to me is the way we started the game. It's like we kind of came out and we were kind of seeing how the game was going. And I don't know what we got down by 16 or 18 points. And I subbed pretty early in the first quarter just to try to get maybe a different energy in there. And then we obviously had a really good second quarter defensively, and we played well offensively. I think the other part of it, too, is from that point on, we kind of fought our way back in the game. It was back and forth. And then, I think down the stretch, like the intention to do what we're doing is really good, like getting downhill and trying to move the ball and pass it. We had a lot of untimely turnovers late, where we gotta get better at that. I think that the mentality of getting downhill, we got into the teeth of their defense. We got to the rim. We had so many balls we lost or fumbled or missed a layup or had a really good ball movement, missed a three. We needed to make some of those. But we've got to start better. But I do, to your point, give our guys a lot of credit for the way the game's going, saying, oh, it's one of those nights, and next thing you know, you're losing by 30. So I give our guys a lot of credit fighting their way back into the game.
What about Alex specifically?
He was phenomenal. I mean, I thought, again, anytime, and it's tough. I mean, obviously we've got 3 days here, and, I don't love playing the amount of minutes I did, like I think I've told you guys, on a consistent basis. But once he got into the game, it kind of changed the flow of the game, quite honestly, with what he did. It's great to see him doing what he's doing offensively. I think he probably deserves a lot of credit in this early part of the season. Not only has he been great defensively and his plus-minus is off the charts, but he's giving us a really good boost from behind the line, making some threes when he's got them.
Billy, you spoke pregame about how you felt comfortable putting Alex on KD. What do you think? I mean, you look at that height difference, and maybe that looks like that's an uneven matchup. What do you think it is about the way that he defends larger players like that allows him to just overcome so many of those height differences?
I think he really understands passing angles, and part of that is understanding like where the ball is at, where Kevin or whoever he's guarding is posting up, and then kind of like cutting down the angle where the pass becomes a lot more riskier to make. And he really does a great job of that, and you probably need to speak to him maybe more in detail, but he moves his feet and he's strong enough, good enough base, and we're trying to pull in on the backside to show some support and some help there. But he, they were really trying to screen him to get him off Durant. I mean, that was clearly, they were trying to change the matchup, and I give Alex an enormous amount of credit refusing to get the matchup changed. And there were some times he got clipped and he needed some help, but for the most part, when they were trying to ISO him in the post or ISO him at the elbow, even coming out of a timeout when they tried to get him in the middle of the lane, he just understands those angles and where he needs to be and makes those passes really difficult. And then he's got the quickness to kind of get around and deflect passes.
Billy, how do you decide whether to go to DeMar or Zach with 7.3 seconds left? Just what's going through your process of drawing up this play for this person?
I don't necessarily look at it that way. It was the play that we had on had multiple options, and what ended up happening there is I think DeMar felt like he had a pretty good catch, and so the screening action, the floor stayed spaced for him. I think you have to try to include Zach in the option, DeMar in the option. Alex was even involved in the action, and when those guys are, it's a lot of times in those situations when you're coming out and you draw something up, you're right. Sometimes you don't know what they're going to do, who they're going to put on the ball. They're going to take the inbounder and try to jump out and deny. So you don't know what necessarily they're going to do. You get a feel for that, watching film in those situations they're in. But then the guys have got to read and react to make a play. And just because you necessarily say, okay, we're going to go to this guy, I think DeMar felt like he had really good space in the middle of the floor, with a lot of room to breathe. And, we didn't bring a screen to him in that situation. So it's, Zach and DeMar, obviously Vooch, you're going to try to incorporate him. But I can't always tell you, hey, listen, this guy's shooting the ball, that guy's shooting the ball, because a lot of it's going to be dictated on defense.
Billy, just follow that up a little bit. Theoretically, would you rather have, they may talk about a great finisher. Would you rather, is it more important to have that, or is it more important to so-called make the right play, which they sort of not to compare those guys, but
Right.
to say, well, Jordan was the finisher, LeBron was the right play kind of guy. You know?
Yeah, no, and I get that. I think that, like, I thought Zach, when we went to him late in the game, on different actions, and we went to, those three guys were really involved, Zach, DeMar, and Vooch coming down the stretch, in a lot of different actions. And I give Zach a lot of credit. Like, he got downhill a lot, but he generated shots and created closeout situations, So I think sometimes, where if a guy is doubled, like I thought Kevin tonight did a great job of passing the basketball. They shot the ball well from the three-point line because of him. I think if he takes all those shots and doesn't incorporate those guys, maybe HG up at the end of the game doesn't make that three in overtime. That was a huge three. But he'd been involved in the game. So I get, like, the last 7 seconds. DeMar there was no trap, and he got to a spot and, he got the shot, I would assume that he wanted to try to get off. I think when the double team comes, you got to get off it. I think sometimes shooting at a double teams or the way teams are guarding now, what they're doing to try to disrupt that, you got to almost make the extra pass and try to find a guy. But there was no trap for DeMar. He had open room and space to make a play.
Obviously, you're substituting and switching these guys during the game. Zach's in, DeMar's for him, back and forth. Is there any significance or an aberration? All your starters were like plus minus on minus, and all your reserves were plus.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think the one thing you try to look at, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful to anybody, because obviously it's the most competitive and difficult basketball league to play in the world, and I've got total respect for it. But there is a difference sometimes when teams are playing second units, and second units are going against second units, and first units are going against first units. So a lot of times our first unit is going against their first unit. And in the second unit, Durant wasn't out there for them. It was Beal. And what we basically did with that second unit is we trapped Beal in every single pick and roll. So he couldn't even get involved, But when all of a sudden you throw Durant out there with him, it becomes kind of like a different animal with the two of them. Then you have Grayson Allen out there. So some of that stuff can be a little bit misleading, the plus minus. I totally get it. But if you do get guys that are mixed into second units, I think you can get a good feel for that.
Piggyback off of that, Billy, you coached Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal in your earlier years. Talk about what it's like to actually coach against them now throughout the same team and your relationship with them.
Well, it's probably a reason why I was around a lot of winning, quite honestly. Having guys like that, you're going to win a lot with those guys. They're winning players. I only had Brad for 1 year and Kevin for 1 year, but their work ethic, their love for the game, their commitment to it, their competitiveness, their internal drive to be great, I've got an enormous amount of respect and admiration for. So, I feel like I've been very, very blessed over being involved in the game to be around, some of the best. And, those two guys are not only really, really good guys and great people, they're certainly great players too.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep, thank you.